Welcome to Beyond the Strange. This is Dave C. and my co-host, Brian Anderson. What's up, Brian?
How's it going, Dave?
It's going, man. It's been a long week.
Well, you've got all the family business going on, so.
Yeah, and it hasn't stopped yet either.
Well, that'll settle down eventually.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what family's for. That's what family's for. Anyways, I'd like to thank everyone who's tuning in right now. You can follow us on Twitter, Strange Days 2015, or you can follow us on Facebook, Beyond the Strange, also Google Plus, Beyond the Strange. I got links posted up in just about everything I can think of, and so all you got to do is click on that. YouTube is Beyond the Strange. So, what's happening, man?
Oh, not a whole lot. You know, what was it? Today's Sunday. Yeah, Friday. We had a low front blowing through and a lot of lightning strikes, not a lot of rain. So Friday night, Saturday, and including today, the sky's been filled with a lot of smoke. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got the downwind from up north here in Northern California, and we've just been battling like crazy the wildfires. Yesterday it was so bad that it was like fog, and it was I thought I was gonna have like crazy asthma attacks or something, but luckily it didn't get that bad. But yeah, the fire situation's out of control. You know, the drought situation's out of control. It's just one more thing to chalk up on some of the things to come. Now, hopefully not next month is like the big whammy on our society. So we'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's been a relatively dry season this year, up here as well. I mean, but we've had a lot of fires. They just closed Glacier National Park up here, which is only like 25 miles away to my north, due to a big blaze. And matter of fact, I posted some of the video on my Facebook. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and they still haven't gotten that one contained yet. But yeah, there's I mean, a lot. It's dry. I mean, it is just dry up here. And it's not really unusual for up here, but it is in a way. I mean, about once every 10 years, you have a good fire that gets going, but there's just a lot of them lately.
Yeah, it's been really dry everywhere it seems, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. As a matter of fact, it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better. So I really don't know what to think. But I do want to give a shout out. I want to take this moment to give a shout out to Method of Signaling. Everyone knows him from Jimmy's show, and he does the website for Jimmy, and he does faders.org. And he's streaming us there right now in Fader Chat Cinema. So, Method, I want to say thanks a lot. I appreciate it very much. Right on, brother. That is
Oh,
super nice.
yeah. Yeah, that's super nice of Method.
Yeah, nice guy. Very, very, very cool. Appreciate it. Um, I want to just go back over. I didn't get a chance to pull this up on the screen, but I did want to say that you can follow us on Twitter at Strange Days 2015. Hashtag is Beyond the Strange, all one word. And there is a strange Beyond the Strange Facebook page. Oh my gosh! You know what? I'm better off not reading.
I don't read anything. It's great, except for when I'm doing an audiobook or, but here on the air, I don't read anything.
Yeah, you're better off, dude. I mean, I think yeah, definitely just better off that way. But anyways, so we've got a couple of people that might be calling in tonight. One of them is Big Lou. He might be joining us on Skype here pretty soon. Um, I'm sure people know Lou from Jimmy's show, and I just want to also take a minute to say that this show is basically something that we're putting together for everybody. I mean, not just of course, the Fadernauts are family, and that's all good. But I mean, this show is for anyone who wants to call in, anyone new, anybody who wants to be a part of. Please contact me. Oh yeah, I failed to mention also the Gmail account. If you got one, you can come into the Hangouts and actually be part of the show. Just like Brian is right now, he's logged in under his Gmail account. So that's one way to be able to come on here and sound crystal clear. Talk about what you got. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to say that everyone's welcome. I want to hear your guys' story. I want to hear what you got to say. So, with that, conspiracy theories, Brian. Everyone has one. Everyone's got their favorite. I lean towards chemtrails. I personally believe that there's a group out there of people who are spraying us like cockroaches, and it's getting pretty bad. For a while there, it seemed to have stopped, but it's just starting to happen again over the past week or a week and a half. Oh, we got someone calling in.
Oh, hey.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, hi, Dave.
Hey, how's it going, man?
All right. I haven't. Go ahead. You can pick up with the show because I wasn't able to pick it up online. I wasn't sure where to go, but let me start tuning in.
Oh, no problem. You're live right now with me and Brian.
Okay, cool. I know you said it was on conspiracies.
Yeah, I was just talking about. I just started talking about chemtrails, but please, man, you got something? Let's hear it.
No. I actually chemtrails is a weak spot for me. So go ahead. Let me hear what you had to say, or Brian has to say.
Well, I was just talking about how it seems like it just seems like they're spraying us like cockroaches, man. I mean, You don't have to be a super scientist genius to look up in the sky and say, "What the hell's going on?" I mean, this isn't normal. Especially when I was, a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, I didn't remember seeing all this crap.
Well, that's certainly true. I was sitting down with a guy, so you get a sense of his perspective. He thinks he might have been abducted. He's an electrical engineer, and I can't even repeat his arguments because I have so little experience. I'm just going to tell you, for the sake of argument, he claims it has to do with the way, he said he looked into it, and he thinks it has to do with the way engines are reconfigured to cool them down. I can't say much more than that. So I'm being, what's the word, devil's advocate. So I don't know very much about it. I can look it up while we're sitting here. It's not something, but go ahead. You guys can go ahead and talk. Because and Brian actually has a background in aerospace.
Yes, he does.
Yes.
I'm about to take here in a second.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the physical configuration of the engines first, okay, as far as chemtrails are concerned. Now you've got contrails and chemtrails, okay, and there's a big difference. Now with your standard aviation fuel that's used on jet aircraft, there are additives added into the fuel. Now you got to remember, an aircraft's fuel, especially a jet aircraft, is pretty much a high-grade kerosene, okay? But these are closed fuel cells, and moisture does get in. So they add bactericides, stuff to kill off the microbes. So you do have chemical additives into the jet fuel. Most of it is there, number one, to kill off the microbes, any bacteria or fungus or what have you that will get in and start breeding because of moisture. Number two, it's to keep the atomizers clean. Now, I'm not sure how many know how an actual axial jet engine works, but you have compressors and stators, okay, or rotors and stators along a line, going down line, and it depends on how many stages the aircraft needs to function for bleed air and whatnot. But all that engine does is compress air. That's all it does. It's not till you get to the end of the line that the fuel is actually added. It's not added anywhere in there. What happens is when you compress the air, it gets hot. And then, much like a diesel engine, you have a number of glow plugs. We'll call them glow plugs because that's what they are. But they call them exciters on an aircraft. And basically all they do is add an electric charge. Okay, it's kind of like an electrical arc between 2 points is all that it is, much like your spark plug.
I didn't interrupt you because I know you're on a good roll. So tell me the function. Why are they doing some of these things? Why are they adding this glow charge to the process?
Well, okay, what happens, like I said, you need to keep the atomizers, what sprays the fuel into the exhaust. You need to keep those atomizers clear. It's much like putting a cleaner into your engine, into your fuel, to keep the injectors clean. It's the same principle. Okay, but these are just what's added into the jet fuel itself. And like I said, at the end of the process is where the exciters come in. You add the electrical charge. You atomize the fuel into the compressed air stream. Excite it with an exciter. Of course, you don't need them. They're just there as a safety backup because once you have a flame, it's going to continue to ignite. And it gives you thrust. But, and here's where I add the but. That's just your standard operation of a jet engine. Now, when you go back into the 50s and 60s, especially in places like Southern California, we get into cloud seeding. Okay.
Right.
And what that was supposed to do is, since Southern California is typically a dry area, an arid region, anytime you had a cloud formation, what they would do is they would go up, and it was illuminized particles that they would spray into the clouds. What would happen is those illuminized particles would attract moisture, hence producing cloud buildup. Okay, but that's not in the jet fuel itself. That's something separate from the jet fuel. It would be like like crop dusting.
Yeah, that's okay. Like, I know what you mean. I know what you're trying to say. They're just sprinkling it out there gratuitously, but for this purpose of trying to form clouds. Do raindrops form around the aluminum pieces?
What happens is that they attract moisture. Okay, so if there's any moisture in the air, those aluminum pieces attract the moisture, hence not producing, but propagating cloud formation and rainfall by condensing the moisture in the air around the illuminized particles.
And do the illuminized particles also come to the ground? I'm just curious.
Oh, absolutely. They'll come down in the rainfall.
Right, that's what I meant. Yeah. Usually my simplistic understanding of rain is that normally raindrops coalesce around pieces of dust. And
well, and it's taking that principle and building upon it.
Yes. Yeah. So I interrupted your story. Go ahead.
But well, what I'm getting at is I think it's gone a little bit further than that with them trying to climate sculpt. Okay, and what I mean by that is I think they're trying to get more bang for their buck by using more exotic particles.
Isn't aluminum one of them?
Well, aluminum was the first case scenario, but from the data I have seen, it didn't do a whole lot for propagating rainfall and whatnot. But once those aluminum particles fall down to the ground, they get in your water supply, groundwater, your lakes, your rivers, your stream. That's where they're going to end up. But they figured, okay, and I can see kind of the reasoning behind it is, they're so small that they won't harm anybody. Right. But I think they've gotten to, I think they've gotten into more exotic particles in their makeup for doing this. And I can't say for sure, but I think they have.
Were you starting to say that you've looked at the chemical tests? Someone was, either you or Dave, but I don't. So what are you saying? Now they can test the rain to see if there's aluminum in it. Can they test the rain to see if there are other chemicals in it?
Well, yes. Obviously, you could. All you got to do is collect the rainfall, and you could considerably take it. Like if you're on a well, you can have your well water supply tested for various chemicals. You just got to tell them what you want it tested for.
And then, are they doing that now? And if so, what are they finding?
I don't know if anybody has done that or not. A few years ago, you had the snowballs that, you supposedly had the snowballs. I don't know if that's fact or, one of those urban legends that you could light on fire and they would stay lit on fire.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. That actually it's flammable. It's fake.
No, this is an area where I have not even looked. So this is all new to me. So I didn't even, when someone said chemtrails, I said, yes, that's an issue out there, but I never even looked into it. So for example, I don't know if this is considered true anymore, but years and years ago, they thought aluminum might contribute to mental issues like Alzheimer's. Now, I think that's been deep sixed, or at least, let me put it this way. There was concern that if you had aluminum cookware, it might contribute to something like Alzheimer's. Yeah. I don't know if that's the case, if they still say that. Or what they say.
Okay. I used to breed birds. Okay, and this is just going from common knowledge here. And with birds, you cook them up food. I mean, literally cook them up food. Like instead of for just feeding them hard shelled stuff, you would cook them corn, peas, what have you. Okay. Every piece of literature I ever read said, do not cook it in a Teflon pan, because it will kill the bird. It will poison the bird.
Now, good.
all of your Teflon pans, almost every single piece of your cookware, if you have a Teflon coated pan,
Right.
is made out of aluminum.
Okay.
So
Arguing.
now the question is it the Teflon that's killing the birds, or is it a mixture between the Teflon and the aluminum?
I don't know. So we don't know when people complain about chemtrails, they're saying that they think they are, for whatever reason, as you're putting it, climate sculpting, or they're trying to accomplish something by putting additional chemicals into the atmosphere. That's the
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I can't remember which report I just read, but there is an actual official government report out there that actually outlines the whole deal of this. And I can't remember it. I read it about a month and a half ago.
Again, it's something I've not looked into, so you have to understand this is not insincere questioning. So so we're certain now that they're trying to sculpt the atmosphere. That's what they're trying to accomplish, to sculpt climate.
Yes. Yeah. Sculpt our weather patterns is what they're actually trying to do. Yes.
And we don't know what chemicals they're using. And if anything, are we seeing any effects on both the weather or the humans because of this activity? So we don't know what chemicals they're using.
We have, the report didn't say what chemicals they were using. They were just it's a basic outline of what they're trying to do and how, and a little bit on how they're going about doing it. But as far as the actual processes and the chemical makeup of what they're using, no, they didn't go into that.
And so what essentially people are saying is the government, once again, is just asking us to trust them. I'm saying the government, I'm assuming the federal government, but for all I know, it's state by state. But the government is saying, trust us. We're not going to tell you what we're doing, but we've determined it's safe. And there are humans below who are saying, I feel like I have some rashes or allergic reactions, which I didn't have before I started seeing these chemtrails in the air, something like that.
Exactly. I mean, that is exactly it. But the point is trying to attribute what the condition is to the cause.
Yes.
I mean, that right there is your main problem.
A lot. They miss a lot. They being the government, which is to say, I'll give you an example. It's not quite direct, but I can give you a more direct one. I remember reading many years ago, I had my thyroid out, and they diagnosed you. They would give you Synthroid to replace your removed thyroid. And as I recall, at that point, they said 50% of people who have had their thyroids removed fit on this scale. Okay. And so henceforth, every doctor would prescribe Synthroid on the basis of this scale. So even though the scale only applied to 50% of the people, 100% of the people were getting that treatment. And my point is, it's an art that, you're really extrapolating a lot incorrectly, obviously, from what works for 50% of the people to 100% of the people. And another example would be, I remember once when I was a very little kid, my mother washed my socks in Tide detergent. Now, I don't know if Tide's changed since then, but my legs just went wild with itchiness. And, I'm sure I'm one of the few who had a reaction like that, but you're going to have people who, for whatever reason, have a slight adjustment in their genes and thus their chemical composition that just don't react well to these things. So my point again being, for the government to say, trust us, I don't, because I think they get, I'm sure they do their best. I'm sure they're not out to hurt people, but I think they make assumptions that shouldn't be made because you are going to hurt some people. So that's a lengthy diatribe. But I can't pretend to know, obviously. I've been telling you over and over, I'm not familiar with even chemtrails. So I wonder what they're dropping.
Lou, are you saying, as far as not making the assumptions, are you talking about the government shouldn't make assumptions that they're not hurting anyone?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay,
and in fact, in recent years, and I don't want to, last few years, they've realized that people with certain genetic modifications clearly, unambiguously react differently to drugs. And so, like, some people are quick metabolizers, some aren't. Some have, obviously, side reactions to certain drugs, and what you have to do is lower the amount that you give them or not give it to them at all, and so forth and so on. So it's not, again, I'm hoping that obviously they're not trying to hurt humans, but I have a feeling they're doing it without realizing they're approaching the problem too simplistically. So that's a lengthy, again. Yes, I'm agreeing with you, Dave. Yes, I'm
agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And to say just the government, I think that pretty much covers it all, because in my opinion, I think it's all one entity. I mean, you have different branches and that sort of thing, but in my opinion, it's all one entity. And
the federal government really carries a lot of weight, I'll tell you. I mean, either the states do what they say, what they tell you to do, or you're going to pay a price. That's typically how they approach it. So,
right.
I don't know. California, I've only been here a year and a half, so I don't want to, and I've hardly had time to read the papers, but I have a feeling California, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but of all the states out there, I think they're a little more inclined to go their own way, which in this case could mean they're doing even more of it than the federal government might want if it's related to getting rainfall, because the businesses here really need the rain, the farming businesses. Absolutely. They soak up a lot of water.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also in that sense, I'm wondering what's the problem with farmers drilling for their own water on their own property? I mean, why can't?
I'm not familiar with it. I'm not
chime in on that, Brian?
Well, okay. Anytime, okay, if you go to purchase a plot of land, be it an acre, even a fraction of an acre, you may not be buying the entire land. Of course, the way it's set up, you actually don't own it. You pay rent on it to the state and property tax, but that's a whole different ball of wax. However, with that, it's broken down into several things: water rights, mineral rights, and this right and that right. So you may own the land, but somebody else can own the water rights, and somebody else can own the mineral rights. So therefore, if you own a piece of property and you didn't look into that property to make sure you were getting the mineral rights, the water rights, along with all the rights to the property at the same time, and you go out and you dig a hole and suddenly you strike oil, that oil could belong to somebody else, and you don't make a dime off of it. And they have the legal right to come in and pump that oil off of your property.
Are there any?
And you can't impede them.
Yeah. Okay.
Was that Lou?
Well, I'm making this up, but is it possible, for example, the state of California said, even if you own everything, every potential right to that piece of property, we're going to prohibit you by law from drilling for water. Is that going on? Is that what you're?
It could.
I've been seeing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, Brian, I was just going to say that I've been seeing it in the news recently. Not that they're being prohibited, but that people are other landowners are getting upset that aren't farmer in the farming community, that they say that the water is being drilled on the other people's property, but like Brian was saying, the water, it's kind of like a community water.
Yes.
If they drill for this water and they pump it out, that's going to take away from the other people who aren't farming.
I always assumed, I'm really, again, it's an area that I have zero exposure to, but I always assumed that was the case. I'm from Pennsylvania, where water issues were not, I'll almost use the word, didn't exist, except from a polluting standpoint of view, particularly with fracking that's been coming up. But, I was from a lush area. I'm not from the West. So water was not a big issue. Water seemed to be, flush, to use a terrible metaphor. So I don't know how people react to that out here. Except I do know, boy, the businesses really soak it up, very disproportionately to what residents do. And, that's a bias in the government, because the bias protects the businesses, perhaps rightly so.
Exactly. I mean, I've been seeing it all over on Facebook. I mean, I'm sure you have. I don't know if you do Facebook or not, but just in the media itself, I've been seeing, or social media, I should say, how Nestle is selling off all this water that they're bottling from different sources of land, even even like national parks or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about, Brian?
Yes, Nestle is a really big contributor to California as far as taking the water away and bottling it up and selling it someplace else.
Exactly.
So, and that's exactly what they do. They have been exporting out of California tons of water that is bottled, that is taken out of the ground or out of the reservoirs there in the state of California and shipping it to other states and making a profit off of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I was not aware of that. That's, it seems strange given how much water even in Eastern Canada, there's a huge amounts of water. I don't know why they can't use that water.
Well,
Here they have the
transportation becomes a real major issue. Okay, you take the record snowfall that was in Boston last year or the beginning of this year. Well, okay, snow is snow. It's frozen water, but how do you get it from Boston to California?
well,
That
yeah,
there's,
gasoline.
that, yeah, you've got the transportation cost, and then suddenly, and like with a desalinization plant, I don't know if that's still news in California, but when I was a teenager, they had talked about building desalinization plants all the time.
They did build more than one because I read that. But go ahead. I have a little. They're saying it's getting to the point now where it will be cost effective to fire it up again. I remember
Yeah,
reading that.
yeah. Well, I mean, with desalinization plants, you got to. It's kind of like it's a reverse osmosis, is all that it is. So, you've got charcoal and this and that and everything else you've got to use in it, and you can only use so much of it, to remove the salt out of the water. But I mean,
Mhm. Go ahead.
well, I mean, it's just kind of crazy. And then when you get there and you guys have a big drought down in California. It's been going on for years.
Hmm.
Okay. You've got emergency measures stipulated by the state about who gets to use the water and
Yeah.
for what purposes.
Yeah, right.
So, therefore, under those emergency management acts that the state puts in, they get to dictate. Again, it might be your water, but they get to dictate to you how you use it.
Yeah, that's right. Or if you, yeah, right. I know. I know. Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens eventually. There used to be, remember years ago, to produce ice, they would sometimes, they would transport ice from glaciers to the Caribbean for, I guess, the relatively rich people to have ice in their drinks.
That would be
So,
my answer to our drought situation is like you guys were talking about transporting huge amounts of glaciers of that are just sitting up there. But I'm hearing about global warming also. They're sliding into the ocean.
Well, okay, here's the problem with transporting a glacier. Okay, yeah, it's free floating. Yeah, you can do it. Okay, but the speed at which a ship actually moves a glacier and then you get it into the warm currents, by the time you would get it to California, and
It's an ice cube.
yeah, basically, yeah, you've lost over 50% of the total mass.
oh, yeah, I don't pretend to have the answers. I'm at a point in life, and I'm just because I'm older. I'm not 15, so I'm not worried about and candidly as worried as I am about the future as I once was. Now I know I've got whatever so many years left, and I'm just getting more selfish, a little more self-centered, not worrying about the bigger social issues anymore. Which I'm not
No,
saying is a good thing. It's just
no,
where I am. When I was a
I know.
kid, I was much more worried about the long term.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Lou. I mean,
Uh,
I just turned 45 last week, and I'm in the same situation. It's like, I'm getting older, whatever, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But I also have kids,
Yes.
and now we even have a grandbaby, and it's like, what's going to happen with them? We're
well, I
going to leave
don't,
this
so I
world.
don't have that focus, but I understand
Well,
the idea.
right.
If I had
No, I
grandkids, it would
understand.
be different.
Everybody's got everyone's got their different outlook and opinion, and where I'm coming from is, and this is kind of where I want to be aware of what's happening in the world, and having a show like this to have people call in and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's really going on, instead of trusting mainstream media out there.
I personally, and it's just me, I'm not saying it's the most workable, and obviously it would require adjustments. But I'd be happy if cars were banned and everyone had to just ride bikes and use trains. I'd be quite happy with that arrangement. So, it's just, but that's not going to happen. And if I were to walk around with carrying a poster board saying that, standing on the corners, it would mean nothing. It would get nowhere.
Well, no, it wouldn't, because people would look at you like you were strange.
Yeah, of course. But I'd love to get the exercise. I'd love to see less pollution. You're much more financially economical on the plus side. It's a lot cheaper to run a bicycle than it is a car, and so forth and so on. It's just me. And I guess I'm getting back to my other point that I'd be happy to make adjustments, but it doesn't seem like I have enough influence on the world to stop them from shooting prized lions in Africa or so forth.
I know.
I did read online. I don't know if this is accurate, but I read online that dentist is really, his practice is shriveled. Do you know what I'm referring to? The guy who shot the national icon, the lion, out in Africa. He was lied to, apparently.
Yes, Cecil.
Yes, Cecil. Yes, you're right.
If I understand correctly. One.
Pardon me?
He's not the only one. There's also a gal on Facebook I've been seeing a lot, and in the news, that she's going out hunting, and she's like bagging giraffes, just different animals that are endangered.
Right.
And it's like, wow, why are these people doing this?
You guys are both on Twitter, as am I, and I only pop on a few hours a day at most. That's when I do pop on. I can go for a long time without going on. But I saw the other night a tweet, and I can't remember the exact facts, but essentially whole countries in Africa no longer have giraffes that used to have giraffes. So it's just a little unnerving to me. Well, and again, definitely do not wish it were otherwise. And I'd like to vote. I'd like those to be important issues rather than some of the issues they debate in presidential elections and congressional elections. But they're so off kilter with what I think matters that, what can
with a lot of those African nations, and this is my understanding of it, is that they sell the hunting licenses for these animals in exchange, and they're very expensive, $50,000 and upwards,
right?
But the reason they do it and it's the government itself. The reason they do it is they say, well, it funds the conservation of the animals. Okay. So basically you kill an animal to maybe feed and house several more.
But the way the governments are run out there, I'm skeptical about how legit, if that's how the money's being used, for one, and two, people cheat. The Cecil thing was a cheating. That wasn't part of that program.
So well, I have my own views on hunting. Okay. My view on hunting is this. Okay. If you need to feed yourself and you don't have the money to do so, then yes, hunt. Okay. Because that's who we are. Okay. But if you're just doing it because you can, now that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Okay. But then I've got this whole thing of respect about life going on. So
and the preservation of species, if nothing else. But I remember reading when I was a little kid, and I'm not going to say this is applicable to all American Indian tribes, but I remember reading that at least some of the tribes, they would say a prayer before they took a life of an animal, just thanking God and saying all those other things and explaining to God, I do this to survive and all that, which is a much healthier attitude than for quote unquote pleasure. What the hell? What pleasure do you get just crushing a life? But teach his own. I mean, in Pennsylvania, they would make the argument, and it may be legit, that if you didn't cull the deer, they would just grossly overpopulate and destroy a lot of farmland and so forth, or farm crops at any rate. And, at those points, I can't say that I know the answer, and I can't say I know to argue. But I would rather pay African governments to simply not allow hunting, or pay South American governments to really enforce the protection of the Amazon. Teach his own, I would rather that, because you just can't trust these people not to act on what's it called, the curse of the commons, or the paradox of the commons, where it's good for everybody. That is to say, if you have a field out there that's open to everybody, some people will overgraze it because it's free and they can do it, and so everybody suffers because of that one person who took advantage of it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's so much the hunting part. I think, and I'm sorry, Lou, I didn't mean.
No.
I just wanted to make a point that I don't think it's so much the hunting. I think it's the poaching that's really the problem. When
you're probably
not,
right. It could be managed.
Right,
as
and
you say, it could be ready.
when the animal is not in season, or if the animal is endangered, allow it to repopulate. For Christ's sake,
Yes.
They have, in my opinion, more, how would you say, right? They have more right to live on this planet than we do. It's just really sad to what's going on right now. But
elephants,
exactly.
and they take, just for their tusks, they kill intelligent, special creatures.
Years. Yeah.
And so go ahead, Brian.
Well, you got the same thing with rhinos. Rhinos get killed just for their horn. In China, it's an aphrodisiac.
That's
Rhino
right.
horn is an aphrodisiac in China.
It's terrible.
And they pay big dollars for the rhino horn, which instills poaching on the local hunters.
Yeah.
Just to get that big payoff.
It's those tragedies that I regret passing along to Dave's grandchildren or grandchildren everywhere. It's
oh, absolutely.
No,
I was going to say, yeah, I hear you.
It's a shame. I think they're calling. I may be confusing the number, but aren't they calling this the 6th major mass extinction? Now that humans have such control over the planet, I believe they are. Kind of like an asteroid hitting.
Well, it's building up to the 6th major mass extinction, in which case human beings will probably be a part of that extinction.
I saw an article to that effect. That's how some scientists are projecting, that we're going to damage the Earth so much that we won't be able to sustain ourselves. So what can I say?
I saw that article too, and I believe it. We keep going the way we are, and things are definitely going to change, and not for the better. Hey, I want to take a quick break, if you guys are okay with that.
Sure.
This is Beyond the Strange, you guys. We will be back shortly. back with Beyond the Strange, talking with Brian and Lou. We are actually talking about conspiracy theories. Kind of segued a little bit into mass extinction of the animals, and that's always important to talk about, though, in my opinion.
You know, someone else brought up the other day, and it dawned on me. I could tell you who. It was Nancy Burns, and it's not a bad thing. But you know how remote viewing was discontinued by the government, and she mentioned she thinks it's gone black, which actually I should probably be more skeptical and cynical and start seeing, or at least wondering about that type of thing. Our government is almost like an occupying power anymore. They don't tell us what they're doing. They steamroll over us and so forth. Well, I don't know if you guys are familiar with remote viewing. Supposedly the government was doing it and then said there was no true effect and discontinued it. Well, if it's not an issue of concern to you guys, there was something else I was going to. Oh, you know what? There were statues of Snowden, Manning, and who's the Wikipedia guy?
I saw that.
Assange.
Yes, they were put up in Berlin.
You tweeted that out the other day.
Oh, yes. Okay, I don't know who noticed it, but I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's pretty impressive. A different take on it.
I'm just going to say this, and I'll put it out there. And I don't care what your political nature is. I don't personally have one. But when Obama was running, if you remember his thing, it was, I will have the most transparent government there has ever been. And it's the most non-transparent government that there's ever been so far.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of liberals complain about that and point that out. And Guantanamo is still there. Wasn't that like one of the highest priorities to get rid of Guantanamo?
Oh, so. Yeah. Well, yeah. And bring the soldiers out of Iraq and out of Afghanistan as well.
Yep. Yeah. Well, some of them did come back. But, we still occupy, and that's the thing that I see is, well, let's look at it a different way. I'm not a Republican. I am registered as a Democrat, but I really don't have a political. I don't really have a political profile. But when it comes to the military, I do believe we have to be there in some sort of sense to protect not just the United States, but the other people. Look what's going on with ISIS.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those.
I happen to be sharing your opinion,
Iraq,
but I don't.
And they just took over. Go ahead, Lou.
No, I'm personally like a strong interventionist, but I think I'm very much a minority, and I accept that. But I think when I see injustice out there, I don't know exactly where you draw the line, but I think Syria is undergoing hell needlessly, and so forth. And I just think of those as human beings, and here we have in theory, the tools to alleviate that and make a more just world. But obviously I'm very, very much a minority, and I can see why people would say don't, because it just kills, we spend a lot of money, we lose people.
Yeah.
And when we do something like that, something else just crops up somewhere else. I can see those arguments. So,
well, I mean, let me ask you this question. Let me get your general opinion on this. As far as we human beings are concerned, I mean, my personal opinion is, or my personal viewpoint is that we are, what's the word I want to use? We take advantage of everything that's been given to us and spoil it. We overuse it to the extreme. We pollute our water. We destroy the land and put asphalt and concrete over it. Admitted, it's there to help us, but how much help do we actually offer the person that's not in the same financial situation that we are, that are needing? How much do we actually offer them? So I mean, we exploit, that's the word I want to use. We exploit everything beyond measure. There's no restraint most of the time that I see. But and the ones that are in charge seem to be the ones that exploit the most.
You're being a touch abstract. I'm not saying you're wrong, but you want to give us some examples?
Well, it's like it's like the government, the U.S. government having basically not being transparent with the rest of the people, saying, "Hey, this is what we're doing to get here." You know what I mean?
Oh, I resent that so much. Not being transparent.
But in the same time, if they're doing something that affects the populace, shouldn't the populace have a say?
Or be aware of, or understand the reasoning for? Absolutely.
Exactly.
In my opinion. Absolutely. It's disgusting. It's the precise opposite. How does a democracy function in the absence of open information? Well, it doesn't.
If you think we're living in a democracy,
well, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying,
guys,
I'm speaking with idealistic language. But no, I don't think we do. Not by any stretch of the imagination.
Let's keep it back to talking about conspiracies, and let's get away from the politics, because.
But that's fine but as a general matter, you could say there's a conspiracy out there of, I'll just be blunt, the rich, to make sure that they stay that way, which you could say is political. But that's fine. If you want to segue back into other conspiracies, that's fine.
I kind of do. I kind of wanted to bring up the fact that there are a ton of conspiracy theories out there, and I stumbled upon a site, and I'm not going to say which one because it really doesn't matter, but it says that there are like 33 of the top conspiracies, and I'll just name the first top 10.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys heard of this. It's called the Dreyfus Affair. In the late 1800s in France,
sure, I know
Jewish
of it, yeah.
artillery officer Alfred Dreyfus was wrongfully convicted of treason based on false government documents and sentenced to life in prison. The French government did attempt to cover this up, but Dreyfus was eventually pardoned after the affair was made public, an act that is credited to the writer Émile Zola.
Yes. Adding to it, Dreyfus happened to be Jewish, so he was an easy scapegoat. I don't know if your write-up says that or not, but that was an undercurrent of what was going on. Why he, of all the French officers, was picked out to be picked on. But yeah, that's pretty disgusting.
Sounds like it.
Yeah,
definitely sounds like it. The second one they have on the list is, of course, the mafia. This secret crime society was virtually unknown until the 1960s, when member Joe Valachi first revealed the society's secrets to law enforcement officials. What was known was that organized crime existed, but not that the extent of their control, including working with the CIA, politicians, and the biggest business in the world. Anyway.
Yeah, well, their connections over to Italy were tapped during the Second World War to help smooth our way back into occupying Italy. What's you guys' knowledge or impression at any rate of how strong the mafia is these days? My impression is that the FBI really did a number on them over time. But do you guys know different?
I don't know different. My opinion and my viewpoint is they're still out there, but in a different sense. Instead of pushing alcohol, of course, back in the day, and
right.
drugs and whatever, gambling during the 60s and 70s, and pretty much pillaging, Las Vegas and all that sorts. I think that they've gone into a different stream, like politics.
I was just gonna say that.
Probably land. We're talking about the oil. Getting taken away from other people's property and that sort of thing. And that sounds kind of like they're up their alley, wouldn't you guys say?
What I notice is the Mexican gangs or the South American or Central American gangs seem to be pretty strong. That's what I've noticed. That
Well, if you notice with that's mainly a drug and human trafficking deal between the further south you go, it's mainly drug and human trafficking.
without doubt, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently they're pretty violent, based on what I've read, which is just a little unnerving given where I live. But
Right.
they're out there. Let me think. There was another. Oh well, yeah. Gangs are kind of frightening, and they say so much about this destabilization of governments. And I'm referring to the Mexican governments and the corruption of other South American or Central and South American governments, all because of our war on drugs. And I'm not up on what that translates into. I don't think it's, well, whatever. Obviously, we're not handling it very well.
No, we're not. And not to get back into the political
Right.
pool again, but I'm definitely for proper border patrol, immigration. That for some reason nobody's really finding a way to do this. I mean, whether and here's the conspiracy part, guys. I don't think they want to.
Now I think you're right about cheap labor. I think
and I'm sorry, but yeah, that's where I'm going to agree with all of you on this. Is what it is, and I grew up with this migrant workers, cheap labor is basically what it comes down to. So yeah, your farmers who are using migrant laborers really don't want this issue settled because they won't make a profit.
Well, even I remember I visited some people in San Antonio, and I saw some people, relatively large houses, upper middle class, large swaths of upper middle class people, retired generals and so forth. And they had people, illegal immigrants, who were cutting their yards and taking care of their houses, and they don't want it either. They want the cheap labor. The thing is, when our illegal immigrants get older, someone has to take care of them. So you and I, or at least I, end up paying for it. Maybe you guys are both super rich. I don't know, but it's a little unfair. It's pushing the burden off to the future and other people who end up having to pay for all this. So I mean, that's how I see it. And what's a little unnerving is, I think they're quality people. Don't get me wrong. So it's not that what concerns me is if it's easier or relatively easy enough for those folks to get across the border, how difficult can it be for ISIS now to get some people across the border? They do a lot of damage.
They've already pretty much proven that people who aren't part of ISIS dressed up as ISIS. Now, I don't know how true those videos are that they show on Facebook or online, where they're in a boat and they're not only coming from the south, guys, they're coming through Canada as well. And I saw a video where a guy was in a boat, came through, I don't know exactly where, but he came through Canada and was able to cross the border that way. And he was ISIS garb.
Wow.
Well, okay.
Questioned him.
If we go back into the conspiracy theorem here, let's go back to 9/11. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go back to 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these were gentlemen that were here on visas. They weren't U.S. citizens. And yes, I mean, and this happened at the same time I was in A&P school. And I was actually in A&P school with a gentleman who was getting trained in the U.S. He was a Saudi national, but he was over here on an educational visa, and he was somewhere in the chain of the Saudi royal family. Okay. But these gentlemen who perpetrated this act were trained here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to tell you because it's inconclusive that, somebody went in there and set explosive charges in the towers. And I'm not going to tell you it wasn't a cruise missile that hit the Pentagon because I can't do that. Looking at the physical evidence, I can't say one way or another. I can give you statistical facts. I can tell you that since jet fuel is high grade kerosene, it can and would melt the structure, those girders, those steel girders, because it burns at such a high temperature. Okay. And I can tell you by looking at the evidence that I see at the Pentagon, could it have been a cruise missile? Absolutely, because the only piece of physical evidence you have is a picture of a rotor of a jet engine. And your cruise missiles are not solid or gaseous propellant. They are liquid propellant propelled by a jet engine with a guidance system. They're just a miniature jet aircraft. However, knowing the size of the fuselage of a 757, which is no bigger than a 737, being a little over 12 feet in diameter, yada, yada, yada. But I can't say one way or the other. What I can tell you is that I know that the people associated with the Saudi royal family were told 48 hours previous to 9/11 to leave the country, to do whatever you can to get out of the United States. That's what they were told. Now, did that come from our own government? Yes, it did. That's where the warning came from.
No kidding.
No kidding.
And,
Luke, can you repeat that
Brian, not
question?
that I don't, do you have that, is there a document out there? Like a report in the New York Times? I'm making that up, whatever. Where
No,
did you?
but if you look back, now remember what I said. What I said is that I went to school. I was in A&P school with one of these gentlemen who was here on an educational visa.
Okay, right.
He was warned 48 hours ahead of time. He was not in school that day. And he was warned by the State Department.
What is A&P school, by the way?
Airframe and power plant.
Okay. There's also anatomy and physiology, but they don't say physiology school. Okay. What I can say is that event had a huge, by my standards, had a disproportionate impact on the amount of government control, secrecy, and observation of American citizens. Do you guys recall, were any of those folks that were involved in 9/11 on those planes, the Saudi citizens, were they here on expired visas? Does that come to mind to you?
I think maybe one of them was. I mean, I haven't looked into it in detail in quite a few years, but I think one or two of them were. However, and I say however, if you look back into the press data concerning 9/11, you will see, and I think it was either the Washington Post or the New York Times actually stated that, yes, most of those people associated with the Saudi royal family that were in the U.S. were actually warned to remove themselves from the U.S. 48 hours previous to 9/11.
I know that happened. I knew it was happening. I didn't know the timing of it. That is, I knew there was a warning given to those folks to leave, but I didn't know the timing of it. If you understand what I'm saying. So I'd have to go back and check that.
But all the indications that the FBI had said there was something going on. Okay. Now this is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Okay.
Oh,
And you're going to tell me that nobody in the FBI connected the dots. See, that's where my suspicion lies, is that the FBI knew it. Matter of fact, all the fact checking proved that the FBI had all the indicators, but nobody
yeah.
connected the dots.
Wasn't there one guy, I think he actually died in one of the towers, who kept warning that he saw a lot of activity? And I think he was former, I can't remember, I think it was FBI rather than CIA, whose name I forget, but I think he quit, and it was implied that he quit in disgust or frustration, maybe the better word. And by coincidence, he went to work as a security specialist in the towers, and he died in the towers. And I think it goes all the way back to the first attempt at destroying the towers, or at least damaging the towers. Remember, someone drove in with a truck into the basement and tried to blow up the truck, and obviously
Now,
hoping.
yeah, that was during the Clinton administration when the
Yeah,
first attempt was made. Yes.
I'm just saying, I believe an FBI officer kept his finger on the pulse of that activity subsequent to that. And he was of the opinion, the strong opinion, that they were going to make another attempt. And he was frustrated by his superiors, who weren't willing to allocate the time and attention to this man's frustrations. And I'm not going to say, for all I know, they're all out there. Every agent has his own agenda, and so they have to make their best decisions. I'm not here to say all that, but I do recall he was very frustrated and he quit. And again, he went to work as actually a security advisor for the towers and was killed in the plane crash. So, at least somebody out there who was FBI did have his finger on the pulse, but he was, as all too often happens with people who care, he was shunted aside and treated poorly, and they said sayonara. It was an interview I heard on another show called Dr. J, who brought that home to me. A lot of time whistleblowers, those are the people you should keep in reward, because they actually care enough to be able to be willing to stand up and take the hits and step on toes. And it's because they care, not because there's personal aggrandizement or financial reward. It's just they were raised to be citizens who care. I'm really digressing and being abstract. And I can look that man's name up, because there was actually, he's well known. I just have to look up his name. I'm getting older, so too much is leaking out. Stress is kind of my own. I have some personal stresses it's amazing how much they distract my energy. You know what I mean? I'll be working, and like every third thought is about something that's in, my personal life that's stressing me. I'm getting older, and so forth and so on. So the memory just isn't what it was when I was 21. I don't think.
You're not the only one, Lou. Hey, I want to point out. I want to step in for a second. I want to give a shout out to Gunny Jean Vito. Oh. He's on Twitter right now, and what's up, Gunny? He wanted to point out. He says, I remember that the peeps in the WTC had warning as well.
The peeps being the people?
The peeps being the people. But before we get back to the subject, I also want to give a shout out to Marilyn Myers. She's also listening on Twitter. Thank you very much, Marilyn. And everyone else who's listening. Yeah, I'm seeing you on Twitter, guys. And if you got any questions, please, step in, or you got any comments, I'd be happy to share those.
Or give out your number. Give out your number if they can call in on Skype or whatever.
Right. The Skype ID is Strange Days 2015, and I'm working on getting a phone line, for people who still want to call in on the telephone. But if you have a Google account, like a Gmail account, just a regular Gmail account, that'll get you into the show on Google Hangouts.
Way over my head.
It's super. Anyways,
you're gonna say it's super easy.
I was gonna say it's super easy only because when I put the link out there, all you gotta do is click on it, and if you're already logged in, like say you're logged into Chrome or something using your Google account, it'll pop you right in there.
All news to me,
Yeah, it's just a little more work than just calling in on the phone, but You get the nice, clean sound, just like you are right now on Skype.
I have to look up the name of that man who was so skeptical, and then I want to research and make sure I'm characterizing him correctly. I think another reason for memory loss is the older I get, the more information I'm trying to cram between my ears, and it just starts leaking out just too much. So,
yeah, I try to stop doing that.
When I was a kid, I used to read like a newspaper or two a day, plus probably subscribe to 15, 20 magazines because I just soaked up information. That's not the case anymore. But we were getting to the trade towers, or at least people sneaking across the border and showing how vulnerable we are.
Well, just all part of the same package. Go ahead, Brian.
Absolutely. But I believe Gunny is correct. If my memory serves me correct, I believe I remember that, yeah, there was a lot of chatter about those folks in the towers about, I can't remember if they were given direct notification or if somebody was actually calling in and warning the guards at the tower at the time, before this happened, and actually giving them over the phone warnings. But like I said, I can't remember if it was from our government or not. I just don't remember that much. Like I said, I didn't bone up on this subject before we started the show.
I have a couple of things. There's a woman named Dr. Judy Wood, and she's on YouTube. Have you guys heard of her?
I have not.
She's I think a mechanical engineer, a PhD, and she wrote a book about some of the anomalies of the collapse of the towers and some of the results. And she thinks a certain type of energy was used, sorry to be so simplistic and cryptic, to bring it, or she suggests that certain types of energy were used to actually bring down the tower. But she doesn't say who did it. She doesn't point out who she thinks the conspirators were, which doesn't, I realize Brian was saying that the towers could have come down from the melting, just from the fuel, if I understood correctly, that it would melt the steel girders. What sets everyone off is just how it came down. So just as if there was a planned implosion, because it came down so straightforward and then just topple over like like something crashes into it and the top breaks off and kind of goes slamming down.
Well, you've got to use physics on this one and realize what gravity does. If you do melt those, because the support structure is on the exterior, it wasn't on the interior. I mean, the only support structure you had was floor structure. Most of the support was on the exterior of the buildings. Now, if you take couple 100 tons of concrete and steel and you drop it in on itself, everything below that, it's like a cascade effect because you have gravity coming down.
That's what it looked like. Well, again, I'm just saying that's what triggers people's suspicion. I think that it looked like such a clean collapse, and I can understand. Yeah. And I looked at it and I said, "My God, that looks so obviously planned," but doesn't mean it was. And I'll tell you one place where I'm in minority, and I'll explain this as best I can, as quickly as I can. I realize too that when we can't see each other, when we're talking on the line, we're going to interrupt each other. It's just inevitable because you can't tell when the other person's quite done talking as you can when you're looking at them.
Timing. It's all about timing. That's all we gotta remember is there's three people on the line, and we got to kind of just, like when there's like a brief pause, like that.
Yes.
If we can do that, I think we'll all be fine. I also want to mention that Allison Bell is on Twitter with us right now, and she's also, she made a comment about Richard Allen Miller thinks it's a buckyball bomb. I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Well, buckyballs. As a matter of fact, there was an article out this past week that they believe space is actually filled with buckyballs. Buckyballs aren't an unusual thing. And yeah, you could theoretically build a bomb using buckyballs. And I think what Lou was referring to with the previous doctor, I'm sorry, I forget her name. I think she was. I think she was suggesting that it was scalar energy that was used.
That sounds correct, but I'm not going to say with certainty.
I've heard
Yeah,
the
go
same.
ahead.
I've heard the same thing that you guys are talking about, scalar energy.
Here, let me just, and you guys, I think I'm a minority of one, not just between the three of us, but between any group of 500 people. I'm the one person who sees it this way. But remember, as Zapruder, when you see Kennedy's head snapping backwards in the Zapruder film, it just implicitly suggests to everyone's mind, including mine, when I first look at it, I say, well, obviously someone shot him from the front. That's what causes your head to rock backwards. And so everyone says, and I don't mean to, including me, make the first assumption that someone shot him from the grassy knoll. But it turns out the doctors are saying that a head, not as distinct from a watermelon sitting on a plank. If you shoot at a watermelon from in front of it, it's going to go backwards along with the bullet, along with the energy that takes it in that direction. But because of so many nerve endings between the head and the rest of the body, between the brain and the rest of the body, that when they freeze up and they react so quickly, that actually a head hit from the rear will roll backwards, as distinct from rolling forwards, like you would know, So that makes me think there was only one shot from one direction, and I come down to the conclusion that there was a lone gunman named Oswald. And I realize in the crowds I circulate in that I'm like the one guy out there who thinks that it was Oswald and Oswald alone, and I think he was shot from the back. He shot Kennedy from the back. But my broader point being, it sure looks like he was hit from the front, because that's what you normally expect the head to do. Anything to do when it's hit from the front is to go backwards. And it's kind of like looking at the Twin Towers coming down so cleanly. You say, my God, that looks just like a planned implosion. So, and I'm not saying, and my point being that despite the fact that it looks like Kennedy's head was probably shot from the front, I don't think it was on further analysis. And I could be convinced that despite it looks like the fact that the towers came down like a planned implosion, I could be convinced, given more science or better science, that in fact that's what should be expected. It's a shame the people who wrote that official report, I can't remember the name of it anymore, but several former, I believe, senators wrote a report, remember? It's too bad they didn't address that super cleanly to explain to everybody what exactly happened. Because then that leaves up such a, everyone points to conspiracy without a proper convincing explanation as to why the buildings fell the way they did, including quote unquote building 7, which wasn't hit by a plane, but yet it too fell as if it looked like it was an implosion. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? One of those other buildings in the area.
Yeah. See, that's the actual mystery. I mean, if we put it all into form here, Building 7 is the actual mystery. Why did it collapse? It wasn't hit. So why did it go down? Was it,
And in the appearance, you know what I mean? It didn't topple over. It didn't like half collapse. It went through that same process of cascade, as you referred to it earlier. So
yes.
all that going on. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. See, and that one is the key factor. Building 7, to me, is the key factor in this whole thing. For it to possibly be a demolition, because 7 shouldn't have gone down. Regardless of what it was, if it was part of the other 2 buildings going down that fell on it, it still should not have imploded the way that it did.
I wish I were an
Guys,
engineer. I wish I were an architect. I wish I could.
no.
I have not read squat. I mean, again, I'm just going by the observational intuition, which, in my opinion, does not lead to the correct answer in the Kennedy assassination. Therefore, I have to keep an open mind as to what happened and why. But again, Brian, that's what cynics or critics say, that, even if buildings, World Trade Towers 1 and 2 went down for the reasons that people are saying, again, I'm just reiterating what you're saying, then why the heck did 7 do that? And so then that opens the door. Well, if 7 did it, and that's inexplicable, maybe 1 and 2 have more of a story behind them than has been getting out. I'm saying all of the obvious, and I don't have the answers to any of it. Dr. Judy Wood points out to a lot of anomalies in terms of the dissipation of the dust and what happened to, for example, police vehicles in the surrounding area, where half of them are destroyed and the other half look like they're unmarked. And I don't think she provides answers. She just says, this is inexplicable given conventional physics or the conventional understanding of the way things are destroyed. So, if you haven't, it can be lengthy, and her book is lengthy and very expensive. I'm not saying you should buy the book, but she purports to be a real expert, and she won't go on interviews unless the person has read the book, because she wants the person to be very knowledgeable. So it's an interesting facet to the whole discussion. I'll send you guys the links. I'll never ask you about it, so if you never watch it, I'll never know.
No, that's fine.
No, but that's how I
Lisa,
do things. Everyone's time is short, so I realize they can't spend time looking at YouTube videos.
Sorry. Guys,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sure.
No, I was just trying to say, Pieces of Lisa. She's with us on Twitter as well, and she wanted to say hello, Brian. Hello, Gene. Hello, all. And Gene wanted to mention that Building 7 never should have pancaked down as it did. Also, one more quick thing is Les is trying to join us on Skype too, so you might hear me doing a couple of things. Go ahead, guys.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. Let's get Les in.
Let's see if I can. Let me see if I can find him. It's cracking up the audio a little bit, but let's see if we can get Les to join us here.
Gene should call in too. Lisa, for that matter.
That would be great.
And Gene's no wallflower, so I don't know why he's not calling in.
Well, let me ask you, Lou, and hopefully if Les comes on, it doesn't disconnect you or put you on hold.
Saying that, it's probably going to put you on hold for a second, Lou, so if you can still hear the show, just hold tight.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, but what I was going to ask is your opinion there, Lou. Was Kennedy's assassination, do you feel it was a military complex type of deal or a mob type of deal? Or do you think it was just a lone gunman?
That's not working. I'm sorry. Let me get Lou back. Hearing a bunch of stuff. I'm really sorry, guys. Give me a second.
I hope I didn't put Les on hold now.
No, it's something that we got to figure out. But I don't know if you heard Brian's question or not.
I did not. As soon as you started asking, there was silence. So I'm sorry.
Anyway, Les, if you're listening, I'm trying to get you. So try to call in again.
And Brian, what was your observation?
Oh, there he is.
What I was asking, Lou, is your feelings on the Kennedy assassination. Was it a lone gunman, military complex, or mob related?
I think it was a lone gunman, period. I think it was Oswald. I think Oswald was pretending to have connections to the right wing so that he could sell himself to Castro and so forth as someone who could infiltrate the right wing and gather information to pass along to the lefties. I think Oswald had delusions of grandeur, and I think the son of a bitch had just some...
Hello?
Good evening.
Les, what's up? Hey, I think I just lost Lou. Let me see if I can get him back.
Sure.
Lou, you there? Oh, man, I lost Lou. Les, you there?
Same problem. Yeah, I'm still
here.
here.
Same problem. Highly unprofessional people. I'm sorry. I apologize. We'll try to get that fixed. Lou, if you're listening, try to call back.
So, did you get the RAM?
Obviously not. No, I got the RAM. We're actually in a live show right now.
Hey.
Yeah, everyone's listening, man. Marilyn, Lisa, Allison, Gene, Brian's with us, right, Brian?
Yep, still here.
Brian's still there. That's good.
Well, that's a
highly,
bonus.
oh, this is great. I love live radio. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, Les is with us. Say hi, Les.
Hi, Les.
Lou, I am so sorry. Lou's probably like, I'm never going to call back again. I'm sorry, man. I'll try to get that fixed.
It might just be a Skype account thing. Maybe you can only Skype with one person at a time. I don't know.
Well, I think I think it's that way for the software setup. I think that's exactly what it is. You can only Skype with one person at a time, and when you bring somebody else in, it puts the other person on hold or disconnects them.
What I experienced last week, I believe it put me on hold for about 30 seconds, and then it booted me. I'm pretty sure anyway.
Well, it happened when Lynn called in, I think, right?
Yes, correct.
I try to answer.
Hi, Lynn, if you're listening.
Right now. Yeah, hi, Lynn. I'm not sure if she's listening or not, but everyone else is. But
that time difference thing.
Oh, gosh. Well, these are the bugs that we are going to get fixed, people. I promise.
So, have you guys, what's the topic for this evening?
We were just talking about the 9/11 conspiracy theory, and Lou was on a roll, and then his call dropped. So,
oh no!
Yeah, I know.
Well, you had one of the best people for the job, unfortunately.
Well, Brian is no slouch. He was talking about it as well.
And, yeah.
But
damn,
that's what happened when you try to do something new on this show.
Yeah. So had you guys already gone through scalar weapons and false flags and all that other kind of stuff?
Brian?
Well, we were talking about scalar weapons and possibly buckyball bombs being used on the towers.
That's interesting. That's not something that I've heard of before. Buckyball bombs. Explain that to me, Brian. What is that?
Well, Allison brought it up, and basically buckyballs, and I'd have to go in and do some research because I don't do a whole lot of research on buckyballs. But buckyballs from an article I read last week sometime is supposedly the scientists now believe that buckyballs are throughout the entire universe now. They make up a great portion of the universe. And theoretically, if you can get them into a place and crush them down, and you could theoretically make a bomb out of them quite easily.
Interesting. I've just heard the basic stuff where they were using, where they were using ferrite, and they were using, they had of course gone in there a week or two before, and possibly placed bombs in Building 7, and in strategic places in the towers as well. Also heard of, of course, that they weren't really planes, that they were drones. I've heard, the basic conspiracy theories, of course, on what's happened. It's funny. About 3 years ago, I was in Pennsylvania, and I was about 15 minutes outside of the place where that flight that fought back crashed. And they've turned that into a monument, and they basically have now everybody. It's a memorial site. They've literally turned it into a park. It's quite sad that they've actually used it. The little town that's nearby it is actually using it to, for their benefit. It's a little sad. I kind of, refused to go there when I when I saw the signs going, oh, come here. This is where, was it Flight 93, I believe, or 73, something like that?
Yeah, I think it might have been 93, but I don't remember right off the top of my head there.
Yeah, it was. Was that a setup too? Did they kill those people, or was that was that bullshit too? It there. It's so hard picking through all the bullshit from what might be reality. It's and it's sick and it's sad, and as I go further down the rabbit hole, there's more and more that I believe that could be true. That that maybe if it wasn't our government, it was certainly someone. It could be the shadow government or something even more nefarious. And I don't know. It just really bothers me that that there are people out there like that, and of course there are people out there like that. I just remember back on 9/11 how stupid I was. That I didn't even think that that how easily led people are, and how someone like you and me and Dave can see, or any of us, we could say something negative about it, or they consider negative, and we're the crazy ones. You know what I mean?
Oh, by the way, Gene says it was Flight 93.
Okay, cool. Thanks,
But,
Gene.
I mean, okay. I haven't been to the memorial site, so I can't say, what the town did or did not do. However, my opinion on this, and that's all that it is that if 93, Flight 93 was a true hijacking by terrorists, and those people actually brought that plane down, obviously none of them were pilots, and we don't know what the condition of the pilot was at the time, then I honestly don't have a problem with a memorial site being set up for him. Now, how that's commercialized, now I've got a little bit of an issue going on there because I don't believe in that type of commercialization. But, for those people whose lives were sacrificed, if, again, this was a true hijacking, yeah, I'm all for a memorial site for them because those were some brave people. If they actually stormed that cockpit and actually brought that plane down. So, but, as far as the town next to it and the commercialization of that memorial site, that I have a little bit of an issue with. Okay, I have a lot of an issue with.
Yeah. That's what I had more of a problem with, was just more the commercialization of it. I have no mind. If those people were real, and those people's lives were destroyed, taken early, and they were brave enough to try to get to try to stop what was going on, even if it was just to get the plane to crash before it killed hundreds of other people besides themselves. Of course they deserve a memorial. Of course they do. They deserve to be remembered. It's when people take advantage. Sometimes capitalism is, we're taught from an early age, of course, that capitalism is good. And I guess the older I get, the more I find that capitalism isn't necessarily all it's cracked up to be. For what people use it for.
Hey, let me ask you something, because I asked Lou the same thing, so I'm going to ask you the same. I'm going to ask you exactly what I asked Lou. JFK assassination. Do you think? How do you feel about it? Was it the military-industrial complex, just the lone wolf, or was it the mob? Out of those three, which one do you go with?
Wow. No one's actually asked me that question before. Of course, I have. I think it was a. I think it was a coup d'état. I think it was a little bit of. I think it was a little bit of the military-industrial complex and the mob. I think they joined forces, and I think it had a lot to do with Kennedy possibly getting ready to get rid of the Fed. And going to green, and going to what any country has the right to do, and that is make its own money, which is, of course, interest free. Of course, the last president who did that was also shot in the head, and also created the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, I know you and Dave. Dave, you can tell me if you've heard of this as well. About a week before, hadn't he also talked to the military-industrial complex, or he went to a certain general, and they say another reason he might have been getting ready to be, another reason he might have gotten shot as well,
Are we
is
talking about
because
Lincoln?
he was getting ready to throw the UFOs out. Disclosure.
I heard something vaguely about that, but in all honesty, Les, I don't really know, honestly. Um, real quick, I'm sorry, guys. I just want to shout out to Karen McIntyre. She says, "Hi, Dave," and there's a lot of things going on here in Twitter, man. This is a lot. Allison Bell wanted to bring up something about going back to 9/11, that C-60. It has a cage-like fuse ring structure, which resembles a soccer ball made of 20 hexagons and 12 pentagons. So that's something that she wanted to bring out there. And
cool. And she also said MIC, he was going to get rid of the Fed until on the UFO stuff, two birds with one stone, so they killed him. That was Allison. Hey, Allison.
Yeah, JFK, MIC was going to get rid of the Fed. Yeah, I mean, doesn't really pay to be a president when you got your own agenda, huh?
Yeah, I mean, do they really? I mean, Jimmy brought up a good point, and maybe, a lot of other people have brought up this point as well. Do they, the second they, they're sworn in office, do they bring them, a mile underneath the White House, and, they have their kids tied up, and they have a gun to their head, and they go, okay, you're going to do what we say, or we're going to kill everybody and you at the same time.
Right.
Are you on board? Excuse me. It's a scary situation, because you know what? I thought Obama was really going to do some good stuff. Now, of course, I won't get into politics, because politics just pisses everybody off.
Yeah, but we went there already. Allison said, "Hey, back." By the way.
Yeah, I said hi. But yeah, I think Brian. I think it was both. I think they got help from the mob, the MIC.
See, my whole thing here is I believe JFK was probably military-industrial complex, pushing the politicians. Kind of a mishmash between the two, along with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I believe those were all political. I think Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were more political, but I believe, and this is just my belief, of course, I believe JFK was military-industrial complex pushed. But but with his brother Bobby, I think Bobby was more of a mob-related type deal. I think the mob pushed the hit on Bobby, along with the ties to the politics and the military industrial complex. But I think Bobby was more mob related.
Yeah. Yeah, I really haven't looked into Bobby all that much. It's I've seen more on JFK, of course, than I have on Bobby himself. Um, but I think it may all go back to yeah, I think you're right. It probably goes all back to the mob ties that they used um, to help get JFK uh, made into president. And then, of course, what was it? Their father, or was it their grandfather, who basically had ties to the mob as well during bootlegging?
That would have been their father, and well, their father was tied into um, the bootlegging with the mob. That was their dad, but their grandfather was not above reproach either.
I gotcha. Okay. I know he pushed pretty darn hard for his kids to become politicians, and once they had the money. Um, it was all about once the war started. He wanted them to become heroes so they could get into politics, basically. From what I've read and what I've seen, because once you have money, it's all about becoming a politician after that and keeping the money. It's yeah, it seems to be one of those things. Once you have the money, you go into politics to make the laws to keep the money. Now, how do you feel about that, Dave?
Well, you know what? I wanted to throw a ratchet in there, and you guys might know something more about this, but why would they go after Junior, JFK Junior, or was that just an
Well,
accident? Well, yeah, I mean
remember. I'm sorry, dude. Go ahead.
no, I was just throwing it out there.
Well, if you remember, wasn't he attorney general for his brother? He went after the mob, dude. Bobby did.
No, 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 not Bobby. I'm talking about the JFK's son.
Are you talking
Oh,
about, you're talking about yeah, JFK Jr. in the plane crash.
And the plane crash. I mean, that there's another Kennedy who wasn't even involved in politics other than he created a political magazine called
George.
George.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember that cover very well because it had um, supermodel, what's her name? Oh my gosh.
Cindy
Uh,
Crawford.
Cindy Crawford. Thank you, Brian. And but
Uh,
I remember when it came out, and I thought he was going to start throwing his hat in the ring, and I would have loved to have voted for him.
Allison was saying, you were saying that he played both sides and aggravated everybody, so they killed him. Now, Allison, were you talking about? You weren't talking about Junior. You were talking about JFK, right there, or Bobby.
Maybe she was
Just
talking about Bobby.
maybe. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. I don't know. You see, I remember that cover too, and I was actually working in a bookstore when it happened. I think. Um, I don't. I really don't know why they killed the son too.
Well,
Uh, if
I think just before the plane accident, I think he had possible, if I remember correctly, I believe he had political aspirations and was just starting into that field.
didn't his mother warn him to never go into politics as well?
Yes, but I think he was about ready to start a political career, if I remember correctly. Again, I haven't done any research, but I think he was just on the cusp of actually starting a political career.
Okay. Yeah, it would make sense. Um, knowing his lineage, and he definitely had the charisma for it. That's for darn sure.
So Gunny is saying Carolyn Kennedy is ambassador to Japan. Fukushima, question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, last remaining member of that family as well.
Well, no, because I mean, okay, not really. I mean, if you think about it, the Kennedys, even though they may not have the last name of Kennedys, are still a rather large clan. I mean, you're still talking Maria Shriver's out there, along with her children, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and so on and so forth. So you still have a lot of the family, even though they don't possess the Kennedy name, and they're still very much involved in politics.
Oh yes, absolutely. And we had Ted that recently passed away, but that was I'm not. I wouldn't believe that somebody would give him a brain tumor just so he could die. But that's just.
You know,
what do you think there, Les?
Well, you know, have you ever seen the movie Serious? Now we're getting into aliens again. Hold on.
No, but I got to throw something out there real quick. Lucian screaming that Oswald acted alone.
Off the air.
Actually, I just read his tweets.
Sorry about that, Lou. That was totally just bad timing, man. And
that's why he was yelling it was a conspiracy. I see.
It's very possible I didn't have anything to do with that. That might have been the man.
Are you part of the conspiracy, Dave?
No, not me, man. Not me.
Well, okay. Let's go back to let's go back to your question, Dave. Would anybody give anybody a brain tumor just to get him out of the way? Let me remind you of a Russian spy in England about 6 or 7 years ago, where they injected, to get rid of him, a radioactive isotope that caused an extreme and vicious strain of cancer in his body to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
yep.
You know, it could be
a very, very small little metal pellet that was that the guy? No, yeah, that was a different guy. I was thinking of the guy that got hit with the ricin pellet.
Yeah, this wasn't a ricin pellet. I believe it was delivered by an umbrella poke, if I remember correctly, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, that was the ricin pellet. I do remember that. Just a little bitty poke from a guy walking by with an umbrella, and the guy was dead within 2 days. But yeah, well, I mean, take a look at Dr. Greer. This is the example that I was going to talk about.
That's a good topic. Yeah, bring it on. Bring it.
Dr. Greer was just getting ready for a major push in politics for disclosure. He gets cancer, his wife gets cancer, and his partner gets cancer. His wife, his partner die. He lives. They all get an aggressive form of cancer, and 2 out of the 3 of them die, and he's halted. Now, you tell me that's a coinky-dink.
Yeah, Allison just said they did it to Dr. Greer.
Absolutely. That's what I believe anyway. I absolutely believe that they gave them cancer, a fast-acting cancer. I don't know how they do this. And killed them because they got in the way. They were about to actually get something done. And luck, as luck would have it, Dr. Greer survived, but his wife and his partner didn't.
Oh wow!
And all this because Greer was researching extraterrestrial contact, was he not?
Correct.
And he was the only clinical psychologist that had tenure that was doing these investigations.
And Gene, says it was polonium,
Yes.
radioactive element.
Oh, wow, how did I miss that?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
here you've got your conspiracy right here. I mean, you've got proof with, like I said, the Russian spy. You've got proof that they will do this. It doesn't matter who they, quote unquote, are, but they will do this to sequester, to solid down, hold down any question that anybody has or any aspirations to bring knowledge to the forefront. So it's not out of the question that those, and we'll just say in charge, or those in a position of power, will go to devious ends to keep information out of public hands.
Yes, I agree. And Cortana, she just shouted out serious at Dr. Stephen Greer. I mean, serious as in not like, are you serious? But
if I'm not mistaken, I believe the movie is now available on YouTube.
It's on Netflix as well.
Oh, no, not you. Yeah, Netflix. I meant Netflix. Scratch the YouTube.
Yeah. It's streaming on Netflix right now. So it's been on for about the past month and a half. It's good. That's where I saw it. And it's a really neat movie. That's where I learned all that from, actually. Hi, Cortana.
Allison Bell just said never upset their money cart.
Oh,
yeah, that's true. Hey, she called it like she saw it.
Phrase of the night. Yeah, don't upset their money cart. Ouch. Isn't that the truth?
Steph is out there. They will do anything they have to do. And she's right. I mean, look at all the NASA scientists who have been killed within, what is it, the last 2 or 3 years? It was like 80-something NASA scientists or something like that. Guys, hello?
Well,
yeah. What was the question again? I'm sorry. My cat was scratching me for food. So
what I was saying is, I know I got my cat moving around under my legs too. No, what I was saying is, and Nancy Nurse is out there. She's saying you're missing the plot of trying to kill Castro with a fast-acting cancer by the CIA. Wow.
Oh yeah, wow. The little pill, the botulism pill that was kept in the freezer that was supposed to be put in his sundae. Or he was a big proponent of getting milkshakes every day or something like that. They were waiting for him to show up at a certain hotel and order this milkshake. And one of the CIA plants that worked there kept the little botulism pill in a freezer. And when he went to go get it out, it was frozen to the fridge, and they couldn't get it out in time. I think it was botulism pill. But
I think you're right on that.
Excellent point.
Very, very good point. And
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. What I was trying to say, Les, is I'm not sure if I got the number right. You guys can, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't like the last 3 years, like between 70 to 80 NASA scientists were like, they just like died?
Oh yeah. Yeah. 30 actually, I think it was. I can't remember what they're working on. Brian, do you know anything about that?
No, I can't remember at the moment.
Okay.
What I don't remember at the moment. What I do remember is, you had all the UFO investigators that were dying off left and right. And then it came into the NASA scientists. So yeah, I do remember that. And I think it's been about 30 30, 33, someplace around that number. And now you've got all the holistic medicine doctors in Florida or throughout the United States as well.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, I
makes
heard
sense.
about that.
That would definitely make sense.
Yeah,
and they're also trying to, I mean, I'm not trying to be a pothead or anything, but you know, they're trying to dummy down the healing
hemp oil.
Well, I was going to say cannabis. You know,
Yeah.
the supposedly cannabis oils. Yeah, cannabis oils is like starting to treat cancers, and they're getting very, very good results. Almost like nobody ever had cancer to begin with.
Well, I can give you an example of that. I do remember reading that there was a girl that ended up moving to Colorado because they made this. There was this one family who grow marijuana, but they grow a strain that does not have the THC in it in as high quantities as another chemical. And this oil, this one girl was having 300 grand mal seizures a day. She was untalkative. She was basically almost in a comatose state. I believe 3 to 5 years old. They moved there. They put her on this oil, and she's now talking. She's in school, and she's down to maybe one seizure a day, if that.
That's amazing.
Now you tell me that's not working.
Oh, it definitely sounds like it's working. Really quick, I want to say, Karen McIntyre says microbiologists dying left and right. Allison Bell says, and the alternative doctors that have recently discovered the cancer stream have died. Don't upset their money. Don't upset their money cart. Yeah, that's true. Jean Bateau, you also said, where'd he go?
Trillionaires.
Yeah, this is basically what it all boils down to, guys. The trillionaires who run this world, they can do what they want and they can cover it up, and that's the biggest conspiracy out there. And we are winding down, gentlemen. I'm sorry. It was just like it was cracking on Twitter just the last almost hour, and man, now 2 hours is going by too quick, guys. What do you?
Yeah,
that's amazing. Like but hey, I want to thank everybody on Twitter. Fed or Nots, you guys are awesome. Les, thanks for calling in.
Hey, buddy, always. Thanks a lot. It's always a pleasure, dude. Thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. And Brian, love you, brother. You take care too, okay?
I'll love you too, Les.
All right.
Thanks again, Les.
Bye.
But yeah, guys, this is the end. I'm sorry. I wish we didn't have to go, but we have to. Oh, that's the wrong one there. But Brian, you got any shout outs before we go?
Once again, let me just put this out there with the new book, the new audio book that I've done with E.R. Robin Dover. I'm taking all the proceeds from the sale of Carnex the Evil One for the next month until September 20th. All the proceeds that I get from that book, from the sale of that book, are going to be donated to his wife's breast cancer fund. So, and you can get a 30-day free trial on audible.com. Just go over to my website.
Right on. Right on. And that website, you already put it out there at brianandersonvoice.com?
brianandersonvoice.com.
Right on. And again, thanks again to everybody who came in on Twitter and just lit it up. And you guys are awesome. I'd like to thank my friend Alan Hall for the bumper music. He's awesome. He's at Alan Hall Facebook. Everybody, thanks again. This was a great show. Brian, we'll see you next week.
You got it. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.